22nd of March 2023, second video in 2 days. What's going on? There, I'm looking at the glimmer twins. The glimmer twins, Donald Trump, Boris Johnson. Both Geminis, but there the similarity ends. Although they both got big hair. Trump is a Gemini with the moon in Sagittarius and Leo rising. Johnson is a Gemini with the moon in Scorpio and Libra rising. Let's deal with Trump's chart first. First thing I want to look at, I'm not looking at the analysis of his chart, and I'm going to try and keep it as objective as I can because I'm an astrologer and that's what astrologers should do. In his progressed horoscope, the progressed moon and progressed Chiron are about to conjoin. And if I were dealing with him as a client, I'd be saying that in the next 2 to 3 weeks, there's a really strong potential for self-sabotage at the emotional level, shooting himself in the foot by saying or doing something he might later regret. But when I look at the outside world, over recent years in his chart, he's had Pluto opposite his Saturn, Pluto opposite his Venus, Neptune squaring his Sun, Neptune squaring his Moon, and this is all finished. Bearing in mind that he's going to be 77 shortly. He's not getting any younger, but then when has that ever stopped someone becoming an American president? As we speak, and over the next year, Pluto is not touching his chart at all. Neither is Neptune. So for him, the challenges of this last 2 or 3 years at the year-by-year level, certainly in terms of the transpersonal, the psychological, the neurotic, seem to be moving on. I do question his long-term psychological and mental stability, but that's not just because of the last few years. It's because of the fact that he's always been a bit bombastic. And with Mercury square Neptune in his birth chart, I would never describe him as a creature of logic, rationality and analysis. More a person of dream, vision and idea. Uranus in his chart this coming year is not touching him, so there appears to be no sign of big drama, yet he's about to be arrested, apparently. Uranus will land on Trump's midheaven next year. And it won't be at the start of January. It'll be in the spring of next year, particularly, I'll tell you exactly when. Uranus will land on Donald Trump's midheaven for the first time around June 24, and it will stay there then till perhaps March 25, April 25. Now, there's 2 different schools of thought with this. Uranus brings change. The midheaven deals with deals with parents and teachers and God and the authority and the state and the law. But it also deals with career, job, work, goals and ambition and the way you market, promote, advertise, sell, project yourself. So one way of looking at this is that with Uranus on his midheaven from June 24 onwards, that's when any court cases, legal challenges are likely to come to fruition and start yielding results. Long process, not seeing final results until the start of 25, by which time he'll be 79 almost. Alternatively, with the midheaven as public image and Uranus as the change bringer, sometimes quite radical change bringer, it may be that he suddenly catapults himself forward to glory around the spring of next year, and the American election is not that far away. Saturn, as we speak, is no longer touching him. It's in his 7th house of one-to-one relationships, so all of his relationships with other people, personal and intimate, friends, social, professional, family, are coming under the microscope. But there's no sign of any new big challenges here. The big deals for him over the coming year are in the short-term future. The eclipse on the 18th, 19th, 20th of April is actually working very well for him. The the big Mars-Jupiter square, which will Mars-Jupiter-Pluto T-square that's coming up in the third week of May, that's not impacting too difficultly on him. I have to say, from an astrological perspective, if I were dealing with him as a client, I'd be saying 2023 looks fine. There doesn't seem to be any big problems, but there is this energy of pushing things further on down the line. And next year, 2024, with Uranus on his midheaven, we'll either see him catapulted heavily forward in terms of pushing himself for president, or the opposite, catapulting himself rapidly downhill because he'll be convicted or something like that. But it's a bit of a fairy tale. You know, if this were the 16 or 1700s, everyone would be gossiping about him in the villages, and it'd be like a sort of make-believe fairy story. There is a degree of enchantment here and seduction. It's turning into not an urban myth, but it's turning into a sense of, the Welsh call it glamour, to enchant, to cast a spell. And it's an ongoing story. But any developments that happen in Donald Trump's world over this year are a prelude to what's coming up next year. Next year is going to be much more significant, and there's a degree of permanence coming up for him next year. Unlike Boris Johnson, who is currently, today, being questioned by his peers around the potential for his malfeasance is too strong a word. The probity of his honesty. And it's really crazy because Johnson's chart is in a mess. Pluto is about to square his moon. Over the next 20 months, it's going to happen 4 or 5 times. So I do feel that his internal emotional situation is going to be compromised quite significantly. Also, he's about to start a 9-month-long Saturn return. It's his second Saturn return, and this will start by the end of April. And then today's the day where he stands up before his peers and is questioned by his peers. And yet today, Wednesday the 22nd, Mars in the sky is exactly on top of both his Sun and his Venus. Venus rules his ascendant. It's his ascendant's Libra, so Venus is his ruling planet. So if I were dealing with him as a client, I'd be saying, look, of all days, today is the day where you're going to get your buttons pushed. It's where you could easily end up saying or doing something you'd later regret. It's a potential for impulsiveness, irritation, volatility, frustration, or even anger. Boris Johnson is very good at being the chameleon. He can be all things to all people. He's quite, I wouldn't say slippery, that's too rude. He's very good at getting in and out of situations without too much sticking to him. But I wonder, with the Saturn return coming up, Saturn squaring his Mars now, Saturn actually squares his Mars for the first time for 9 months exactly yesterday. So you've got Saturn squaring his Mars yesterday and for the next 9 months. Saturn on his Saturn from the end of April through to the end of January next year. Pluto squaring his moon for the next 20 months. Mars in the sky on top of his Sun and his ruling planet Venus today. If I had been dealing with him at the start of this year, I would have said the most critical time of the year for you is going to be when Saturn's on your Mars and Mars in the sky is on top of your Sun and Venus over the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd of March. Now, I cannot help but feel that his goose is cooked and that there's little sign of a way back. And even if he manages to exonerate himself, it's pretty clear from his astrology, Saturn return, Pluto squaring his moon, that his appetite for power has diminished. I do not see Boris Johnson as returning to the front line of politics, and I expect him to leave politics within a year. Whether that's by choice or by force, that's negotiable. But it's such a clear paradox between the two charts. Trump is the great survivor. He will fight till the end. Johnson is the more pragmatic. He will see that the tide is against him, and he's got a very strong wife. People see her in the background, but she does have that Venus-Pluto opposition. She has a degree of capacity for not mercenariness, not cruelty but ruthlessness. Not mercenary, but ruthless. Mercenary is cruel and callous. Ruthless is just yes, no, black, white. And I think she may be saying to him, look, come on, let's get out. Let's just walk away from this cesspit. So I expect to see Trump's name in the headlines over the coming couple of years. He's not going to go quietly. Johnson, I think we're seeing that today and tomorrow, a pretty big nail in the coffin. I cannot see him surviving this. Okay, that's my take on what's going on in the world. Just to add to this, just a note that right now, we're day after the new moon. Pluto is about to move into Aquarius tomorrow for the first time in 200 plus years. These are crazy times. Mars is going to move into Cancer in 2 or 3 days' time. These are crazy times. The sensible ones amongst us will probably stay off YouTube. And we'll count to 10 before making any big choice or decision over the next couple of days. Because rash or radical actions or decisions, either globally or personally, over the next couple of days may carry a signature for the long-term future that is not healthy or conducive to good practice. Be gentle with yourself, count to 10, bide your time. 3 or 4 days' time, the world's going to be a very different place. Catch you later. Bye.